You have found what lights you up. I'm your host, Sunny the Life Coach, and I'm here because I see you searching for something or someone out there to help you feel better. Something to take away the pain that you're feeling, the inadequacies. I know all of the things that happen in life can leave you feeling empty. Your search is over. This podcast is all about finding your own freedom and power to love yourself enough to shine in the ways you were always meant to, the ways in which you are already fully capable of. If you're ready for some real talk, some serious truth bombs, and a few F-bombs, you are in the right place. Let's do this. Let's get lit. Hey there, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here today on this day, whenever or wherever you are. Before we begin, or I begin, I want to share a review from a listener. Laura Sari says, I'd follow Sunny's voice anywhere, and her relaxed delivery and warmth holds so much wise insight in life and how we can live lives filled with so much more joy, presence, and connection. I love the show. Laura, sorry, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to send that message. It warmed my heart. Thank you, love. Also, I am so glad that you decided to press play on this episode today because I feel like the words that Laura Sari shared play right into this. Play in a different way. Now, you can absolutely enjoy this without having heard part one, which was the previous episode. What happened is that after I published it, I realized I had more to say about inner child wisdom. Several important components, actually. So this isn't really a continuation of the conversation, although it could be. It can also be standalone. It can be whatever you want it to be. That's the beauty of it. There are no rules. That's going to make sense in a bit. In the meantime, I want to share that the very last thing that I do in the morning as part of my ritual, if you will, is that I do check in with social media just for a few minutes, maybe 5 or 10, just long enough to check DMs or interactions with posts and to see if the world is burning. I do like to have awareness, my friends. This morning, I saw this tweet that said something along the lines of, is there anything good about being in your 40s? And I just had to check the replies on that one. Just in a minute, I saw a theme. There was a lot of things being said like, I don't care what anyone thinks anymore. I don't care what they think, what they say. I say no freely. And I had to laugh at that because here I thought the reason I was enjoying my 40s so much was because I had finally learned how to manage my damn mind. The truth is, I can recall my mom telling me that I would enjoy my 40s and that she enjoyed her 40s. So perhaps it is true that some of it is about maturity and gaining perspective, but hey, I am still grateful that I have learned the things that I have about the life that I've had. It's an amazing shift. If you haven't yet reached your 40s and you're listening to this podcast, fantastic. I'm so glad you're here. You're going to be much farther along than I was at your age, whatever your age may be. Anyway, in my last episode about inner child wisdom, I really just introduced the concept of it because we tend to reflect back about the things we would tell our younger self today, knowing what we know now about well, life. Like our inner child might listen to the older version of self. Another thing we tend to do is to try to comfort or nurture our inner child. And what I wanted to introduce is the notion that that might not always be necessary. Now, in the event that bad things have happened, sure, you may reach for your younger self and assure her that she is safe and loved and that everything is okay. But we know about that already from therapy, right? What I don't hear many of us talk about is how wise our inner child is. And think back to that tweet that I mentioned, for example. When we're in our 40s, we stop caring what other people think. Ah, yes. And can you recall another time in your life when you didn't care what other people thought? Yeah, when you were a kid. Kids have no filters. They say exactly what is on their mind. They also feel their feelings deeply. They are very expressive with their emotions. As adults, we roll our eyes or even get frustrated when a toddler throws herself on the floor and has an absolute meltdown. But you know what? She's feeling her emotions and expressing them. It's a natural instinct that we eventually learn is unacceptable to display in public, and for some of us, even in the privacy of our own homes. Can you imagine how different the world would be if everyone said exactly what is on their minds in all instances? How fun could that be? Jim Carrey was in a movie like that, remember? Liar, Liar. Oh my God, it was wonderful. The thing is, in the movie, he had to speak his truth, but the rest of the people around him were mortified. Who does that? Adults don't do that. Children do. It's a very free place to be. Before the world tells you that it's wrong or impolite or frowned upon. Like, could you imagine being at the office and just having an absolute meltdown in a meeting? I don't want to be here. This sucks. Or a favorite phrase of my son's when he was younger was, "You're wasting my time." Yeah, he really would say that, and it cracked me up every single time because he was so animated and serious about it when he said it. "You're wasting my time." Do you have any idea how many meetings I would have loved to have said that in? Oh my God. Or just take the stack of papers from the table, throw them in the air, and storm out of the room. Actually, I saw a guy do that once. that was a real thing that happened. I don't know if there were any repercussions later for him having done that. Not technically my business, but I'm guessing not, since he was a guy. I think I wanted to burst into tears in that same meeting, but of course I did not, because my God, my future would have been ruined, right? So it may not be exactly helpful to channel your inner child to express your emotions fully in public, or to say exactly what's on your mind in every scenario in the moment that it is unfolding. But I wanted to get you thinking about that inner wisdom that you used to be able to call on with ease. It wasn't that hard to do. That's another area of wisdom that your inner child holds for you. I think that particularly when it comes to expressing emotion, it can be helpful to call on that as soon as you are able to process it. Maybe it's at the end of a hard day and you can set aside time to reflect on what you were thinking during that meeting and maybe scream in your car or into your pillow later. The point is, we suppress our emotions in the now, a lot of them, especially the negative ones. We never release them. And you can do this. We don't often reflect, we ruminate. We replay that movie scene over and over and recreate whatever it is we were feeling in that moment. The difference is that now you know that it isn't about what happened or what was said, but it's your thoughts that are generating those emotions. You stir up those same thoughts when you recall that event, and the emotion returns because you haven't yet expressed it. So you can continue to carry it around and hold animosity toward others, maybe even some resentment, or you can express it. Actually feel it. Actually feel your feelings. I think the more that we work to clear that energy, remember, emotion is energy in motion, the better we're going to feel overall and the better equipped we become to handle the next thing and the next thing. Because there's always going to be the next thing. I want you to think about how you can express and release the emotions that feel difficult to process in the moment or that are inappropriate to process in the moment. What works for you? Use your imagination. That's another thing that kids are generally great at. I see a cardboard box, the kid sees a castle or a rocket ship. Imagination and creativity are things that, unless we've chosen a profession that leverages those traits, are lost in many of us after kindergarten. We are taught a lot of rules and logic after that. Not much free play in the school day anymore, and certainly not in most work environments. Just tell me what the rules are and I will conform, because I believe that the only way to get from here to there is by following the rules. Kids in general aren't like that. Go ahead and tell them to draw on the paper only, never on the wall. 10 minutes later, you turn around and find artwork on the wall. They weren't trying to be quote unquote defiant. They just saw an amazing blank canvas and channeled that imagination and creativity. Followed that impulse because it felt good to do so. And sure, some of that is testing boundaries. And we all have to go through it. That lived experience of learning consequences, that's life. That's how we navigate it. That's what we do. Because to be fair, some of us would be punished for drawing on the wall, and others might have parents that would put an empty frame around it. You don't know the possibilities until you play it out. And then you start to learn how the humans who are raising you operate. Everyone is unique. All of this is to say that if you're looking for me to give you the formula for exactly how you process your emotions, I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do instead is challenge you to find what works for you. Because I don't know what your day looks like. I don't know how much alone time you have. I don't know if you're comfortable yet expressing your emotions in front of your partner, your children, the people around you. I also don't know what is going to give you that release. I gave you a couple of suggestions: scream in your car or later in your pillow. Those are just examples. What I want to encourage is for you to connect with yourself and consider your own unique circumstances. Get creative and even explore a couple of options along the way. See what works. Try drawing on one of your metaphorical walls and see what happens. Even try drawing on one of your physical walls and see what happens. Here, there are no rules. With me today having this conversation, anything goes. That requires you to demonstrate some trust. You can do it. Find the wisdom of your inner child. Trust your authentic self. Again, who were you before the world told you to tone it down and conform to fitting in this box or that one? Maybe you were like my son, who used to always have notes sent home that read, "Connor was loud and disruptive again today." Yeah, okay. He's 5. Let me tell you about his experience of kindergarten. It broke my fucking heart. After several of those notes, we got one from his teacher that said, maybe he needs to see a doctor. To which we responded, maybe we need to have a talk. Because we knew immediately how to read between the lines of that statement. Maybe he needs meds. And that was a hard no for us. I'm saying this with love and light to all parents with a child, and perhaps even listeners themselves who have been diagnosed with ADD or ADHD or a similar affliction, for lack of a better word. Interestingly, this is prevalent for high energy boys, that diagnosis. It is my opinion that this is overly diagnosed and that our kids are overwhelmingly over-medicated. That is not to say I don't believe it exists or that it isn't extremely difficult for everyone involved, nor is it to say that I think you are wrong if your child is medicated. So let's get that all out on the table right now. I'm simply saying that it was wrong for us, wrong for our family. There's that uniqueness again. I hold no judgment whatsoever toward anyone for how they manage ADD, ADHD, or general hyperactivity. I get it. It's a lot. So, let's get back to Mr. Loud and Disruptive. My husband and I met with his teacher in the classroom, and the first question I asked was, where does he sit? I saw all of these tiny little tables and chairs set up in a configuration of 4 chairs per table, and was genuinely curious about gaining some perspective of what his classroom view was. I wanted to see it through his eyes. And his teacher pointed to the corner. behind her desk, where a lone chair sat with a small table. Talk about wanting to fly into a rage in that moment. Talk about holding back my emotions. I was furious. We both were. It doesn't even matter how the rest of the conversation went because I couldn't really even hear it. I just kept staring at that chair in the corner and letting it sink in that my 5-year-old son was separated from the rest of the class, not allowed to interact because he was loud and disruptive. He may as well have been wearing the label on his forehead. I just remember my husband leaning forward in this teeny tiny plastic chair that had been given to us to sit in, while the teacher sat behind her desk in a regular chair, taking on that visual authority. We knew exactly what was happening with that setup. I remember how ridiculous my husband looked sitting in it. He's 6'4", broad shoulders, and I know he felt that too, that he was being positioned to feel small, so he leaned forward, making himself appear even larger, and said very firmly, he's not going to see a doctor. Your ability to manage your classroom is not our problem. Boom. Now, the point in me sharing that with you is not so you erupt in applause for us having stood up to the evil kindergarten teacher. Listen, I have the utmost respect for every teacher. I worked in the underbelly of the education sector for over 5 years, so I have seen what teacher requirements are, and for the life of me will never understand why anyone would want to sign up for that. Mad respect to all of the teachers. My point in sharing that was that being loud and disruptive is frowned upon in our society, and that it's something that needs to be tamped down immediately. And it starts in kindergarten. Or it starts the moment that you are assigned a chair in the corner and separated from the rest of the class because you're different, because you are non-compliant. You are a distraction. Then I think, well, what do we do as adults? We seek distractions from our mundane lives. We say this, we post on social media to get recommendations. What's the latest Netflix series I can watch to take me away from my shitty life for 10 or more hours? Is there a local comedy club I can visit to just laugh my ass off for a few hours and be distracted? I mean, what? My husband King kept telling Connor in his early years that being the class clown will only get you so far. But then, in reality, we end up seeking exactly that persona. The actor, the comedian, the artist, the writer, those who cultivate their talents and give so much of themselves through a shitload of exercises and vulnerability, I might add. Those people, they represent temporary freedom for the rest of us. And the disruptive ones, well, they change the world. They are the game changers. The ones who say they don't want to play by the rules anymore. And while they make for great stories, like the Ivy League college dropouts who created something we have never had before from their parents' garages, and now we're all addicted to their products. The entertainers, well, as noted, we do enjoy laughter, don't we? We enjoy the ability to immerse ourselves in a story rather than our own for a few hours. That is what we applaud. The very thing that we try to suppress in our children. And so to the defiant ones out there, I say thank you. Thank you for being you. To the dreamers, the schemers, and the creatives, I say thank you. And finally, I want to bring in the component of fun. That's what a child is ultimately after. We find it adorable when babies are exploring their new world and finding fun in the most basic elements or moments. We frown upon it if they are older, and certainly as adults we want to be seen as put together, intelligent beings. But our basic instinct includes seeking pleasure, and sometimes that just means having fun. We've kind of forgotten how to do that because we've squelched our imagination, creativity, and authenticity. We've traded it for conformity. We've become too goddamn absorbed in what everyone else is going to think. And it's funny how Connor reacted to me skating for the first time. I shared that experience a couple of episodes back, and I'm referring to ice skating, but the part I might have left out is that the same kid who was put in the corner in kindergarten told me a few minutes in to our little skate date that people were looking at me. He said, "Mommy, people are looking at you." I can assure you that my response was something very much along the lines of, I don't give a flying fuck if anyone is looking at me or judging me right now, because I'm in my zone, and that zone is I'm trying something new, I'm having fun, and I'm trying not to die. Now, to bring it full circle, is that because I'm in my 40s? That attitude? Is it because I know that I have zero control of what anyone else thinks of me because I've been working on my mindset? Is it because I was channeling my inner child at that moment? Could it be all of the above? D is always the answer. All I know is this: I thoroughly enjoyed myself in those moments of just letting go. I know that I didn't even take into consideration how many people were at the rink, who might be watching me or talking about me. That's not what I was there for. I wasn't there to perform or to be on display. I was just there to have fun, to try something new, to perhaps just immerse myself in exploration or pushing boundaries for an hour. I don't want much more from this life. I do think that in your 40s you might start looking around and asking, what more do I really need? And so last Christmas I asked for rollerblades. I have never owned rollerblades. I've been on roller skates, never the blades. I just wanted to know what the experience was like. Could I hit the nature trails with the kid? Could I learn to keep up? It was so funny. Connor trying to coach me in the garage, and I was a wobbly mess. And this was months ago. But at one point, he looked down and said, "Oh my God, they light up." And I said, "Of course they do. Why have rollerblades that don't sparkle and shine?" So after the ice skating session last week, he said, "Now you're ready for the rollerblades." And I said, "Yes, son. My loud and disruptive son, I believe you are correct. As Rumi says, there is a life in you. Search that life. Search the secret jewel in the mountain of your body. I believe that secret jewel is the wisdom of your inner child. Free her, free him or them. Push the boundaries a little. It's probably been a while. Resurrect some of those characteristics and traits that naturally presented when you were younger. Some of those I've touched on in both parts of this topic include being pure, authentic, trusting, brutally honest, expressive, imaginative, creative, impulsive, and yes, non-compliant. Above all, curious. I talk about bringing your curious mind a lot. Children are naturally curious. We expect that of them. There's another word that encompasses even more than curiosity. It's called shoshin from Zen Buddhism, and it means having a beginner's mind, an attitude of openness, eagerness, and lack of preconceptions. I was reminded of that word earlier today as I was thinking about this topic, and of course, I don't believe it was by accident. So, however you want to approach it, remember it's your journey and you design it. Consider all of those characteristics that I mentioned. Recognize that you have at one point in time held them, embodied them, and consider approaching your own life with shoshin, even if it's just one part of it. Remember, baby steps, right? Exactly that. Stumble and fumble and wobble and fall down. Eventually, those steps will be second nature. You've got this, my friend. No matter what age you are now. Although, if you're in your 40s, hello again. This is apparently our best time. Thank you for joining me on this two-part series about embracing the wisdom of your inner child. As I've said, I don't hear this approach much, and it needed to be brought into the light. Far too often, we are focused on the wounded parts of her that we feel need to be fixed. Today, I simply want you to channel the simplicity, the shoshin. That is your inner child. Remember how she would just light up and shine on.